Kenyan flags in public places and military installations will fly at half-mast for 3 days as a mark of respect for Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe's first post-independence leader, who died today aged 95. President Uhuru Kenyatta issued the presidential proclamation from Mombasa. He joined other world leaders and citizens eulogizing him, describing Mugabe as a shining beacon of Africa's liberation struggle. And as Dorcas Wangira reports, in death as in life, his complicated legacy as both liberator and oppressor haunts Zimbabwe and the rest of the world.
Robert Gabriel Mugabe died in Singapore at the age of 95. He was undergoing treatment for an undisclosed illness at the Gleneagles Hospital. His death comes just 2 years after he was ousted in a bloodless military coup in November 2017. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa announced his death to the world, describing him as an icon of liberation and Pan-Africanist who dedicated his life to the emancipation and empowerment of his people. But for Zimbabweans, the rest of Africa and the world, Mugabe's legacy is complicated. Tributes poured in from African leaders, and in Zimbabwe, even foes paid their respects.
95 years is a long time. In my culture, we say we celebrate, we don't say somebody died. So we are celebrating his life, his legacy. I hope it's a good legacy. He was a committed freedom fighter, revolutionary, not compromising.
President Mugabe will be sorely missed, because he was one of those presidents who also contributed to the freedom of the people of South Africa.
President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a presidential proclamation from Mombasa to the effect that flags in public places and military installations will fly at half-mast from Saturday morning to Monday evening as a mark of respect for Robert Mugabe. He eulogized Mugabe as a shining beacon of Africa's liberation struggle and an icon who led Zimbabwe in its liberation struggle from colonialism to independence. President Yoweri Museveni mourned him as a Pan-Africanist and great son of Africa. Musa Faki Mahamat, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, sent his condolences to his family and Zimbabwe, hailing him as an iconic fighter who sought continental integration. Former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan said Robert Mugabe will continue to live in the hearts and minds of all lovers of freedom as a symbol of Zimbabwe's emancipation. But others said his legacy was overshadowed by the harm he did to his people.
He was someone who was a man of his words. He could do the right thing.
You obviously describe him as a revolutionary. He played a part in the liberation struggle and all he did to empower the black people.
Mugabe is heralded as a liberator who rid former Rhodesia of white minority rule. The political prisoner, guerrilla leader, and teacher rose to power after elections in 1980. First as prime minister and then president, Mugabe was feted as a champion of racial reconciliation when he first came to power. He championed education and health services for the black majority. But in later years in the 90s and 2000s, his policies of land acquisition from the white farmers largely contributed to economic sanctions.
We don't mind having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We are not Europeans. We have not asked for any inch of Europe or any square inch of that territory. So, Blair, keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe.
In his 37-year rule in which he clung to power, he presided over a Zimbabwe that was brimming with promise and oversaw its decline from the late 90s and early 2000s, leaving it on the brink of economic ruin.
He was an African legend. His only mistake was that he overstayed in power.
His rule was characterized by human rights abuses, most notably the massacre of more than 20,000 Debeles by the Gukura Hindi under his watch, and the violent suppression of the MDC opposition party supporters. In 2008, the election result was heavily disputed over rigging claims, which necessitated a power-sharing deal with MDC's now-deceased leader Morgan Tsvangirai. Hyperinflation in Zimbabwe and the collapsing economy under his policies forced many Zimbabweans to migrate seeking a better life. The plans to have his wife succeed him greatly contributed to his ouster. By the time he was toppled, he was viewed by many at home and abroad as a power-obsessed autocrat who unleashed death squads, rigged elections, and ruined the economy to keep control. Dorcas Wangira, Citizen TV, Nairobi.